For 25 years, the European Union prioritized a model of economic efficiency, relying on open markets and just-in-time global supply chains. But as those global chains fracture, that previous model is being superseded by a strategy of state-led industrial intervention. The European Commission is moving away from its foundational neoliberal principles. This shift follows a multi-year assessment that market-making alone cannot defend its manufacturing base against state capitalist rivals directing their own industrial growth. This chart tracks manufacturing share of the EU's total GDP. Since 2000, that share eroded from 17.4% to 14.3%. Brussels has now implemented a mandate to reverse this trajectory, aiming to reach 20% by 2035. This pivot is a response to a critical economic vulnerability. The technologies required for the digital and green transitions depend on an industrial capacity that Europe currently lacks, leaving it reliant on external suppliers. The scale of this dependency is concentrated in specific sectors. 94% of solar modules used in the EU and over 80% of global battery manufacturing capacity are currently controlled by China. To counter this concentration, the EU has introduced the Industrial Accelerator Act, or IAA. The IAA is designed to reverse engineer the state capitalist playbook. It weaponizes access to the European market to force a redirection of global capital and manufacturing back into the Union. The IAA operates by creating lead markets. It mandates that public procurement and state support schemes prioritize products that are manufactured within the European ecosystem. This table shows the new eligibility requirements. Public contracts now require steel with at least 25% low-carbon volume. Aluminum must meet a 25% EU origin threshold, while concrete and mortar require 5% EU origin content to qualify. These rules specifically target the automotive sector. To qualify for public tenders or subsidies, 70% of an electric vehicle's components, excluding the battery, must be produced in the EU. However, union origin is a strategic legal term rather than a strictly geographic one. The Act includes content from trusted third countries, specifically those that have signed free trade agreements with the EU or belong to the WTO's Government Procurement Agreement. As this diagram illustrates, Made in the EU legally encompasses partners like the United States and the UK. Simultaneously, it filters out major competitors like China, Brazil, and India, who lack reciprocal procurement access. These mandates represent a form of institutional discrimination. Brussels is using the state budgets to reroute global supply chains while attempting to remain within the legal boundaries of allied trade agreements. The second pillar of the IAA moves from public spending to private investment. It establishes a new regime of restrictions on inbound foreign direct investment, managed by designated national investment authorities. These restrictions apply to any investment exceeding 100 million euros in strategic sectors, provided the investor originates from a country holding more than 40% of global manufacturing capacity in that industry. This 40% threshold functionally targets Chinese dominance in the battery, electric vehicle, and critical raw material markets, without naming the country explicitly. This is a mirror strategy. The EU is now imposing the same market access barriers that foreign firms have historically encountered when trying to enter the Chinese market. Under Article 18, investments face strict conditions. Foreign ownership is capped at 49%, joint ventures are mandatory, and investors must license intellectual property. Furthermore, at least 50% of the workforce must be union-based, and 30% of inputs sourced locally. The logic is to prevent the creation of screwdriver plants, facilities that simply assemble imported parts to bypass import tariffs without adding genuine value to the European economy. By reverse engineering Beijing's playbook, the EU is forcing competitors to transfer wealth, knowledge, and infrastructure in exchange for access to the European consumer. Beijing has responded to the IAA by labeling the legislation a form of institutional discrimination that creates serious investment barriers. In retaliation, the Chinese Ministry of Commerce has placed several European defense and aerospace entities on dual-use export control lists. These controls specifically target major contractors, including Germany's Hensoldt KG and the Belgian firearms manufacturer FN Herstal. This is a targeted tit-for-tat strategy. China is applying pressure to specific Central and Eastern European nations that support Taiwan. rather than issuing a blanket embargo against the entire bloc. This industrial de-risking carries significant costs. Forced technology replacements in the telecom sector alone are estimated to cost Germany 170.8 billion euros over 5 years. Trade disputes are no longer isolated to the economy. In this environment, industrial policy decisions immediately impact national security and military supply chains. The IAA's impact extends beyond the dispute with China. It challenges the foundations of the multilateral trading system overseen by the World Trade Organization. The European Union faces a structural legal paradox. The localized manufacturing requirements at the core of the IAA directly conflict with long-standing WTO non-discrimination rules. This conflict centers on GATT Article 3, Section 4, the National Treatment Clause. It forbids treating imported products less favorably than domestic ones. In January 2026, a WTO panel ruled the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act's local content bonuses illegal under these exact rules. This highlights growing friction in global trade. The international regime provides no safe harbor for governments implementing climate-driven industrial policies that favor domestic manufacturing. Brussels is effectively betting that the long-term benefit of industrial sovereignty outweighs the short-term costs of legal disputes and trade retaliation. The transition away from neoliberal open market principles is now a matter of policy. The objective of the 21st century industrial strategy is no longer maximizing global efficiency, but engineering national resilience through